What about the famous Miller-Urey experiment in 1953? Stanley Miller and Harold Urey, I can't remember who was the mentor of whom, but they produced amino acids in a laboratory. They used a mixture of ammonia and methane and hydrogen, and they put this into this sealed container, a beaker, if you will, but something more complex than that. And then they passed electricity through it. And on the outside rim of the glass, they discovered that they had created amino acids. So this was hailed as a huge leap forward in origin of life studies. And if you've studied this in high school, undergraduate, graduate work, they still go back to the famed Miller-Urey experiment. That they produced amino acids. And what this showed was if you had ammonia, simple things like ammonia, methane, and hydrogen, and maybe there's a lightning strike in that primordial soup, then you could get the building blocks of life. There you go. Okay, fair enough. There's the problem. Since that experiment, we are no closer to explaining anything else that I just said for the rest of the evening. The organelles, the specified complexity, the homochirality of amino acids and sugars. The way Paul Davies puts it is this. He says, they are as far from the completed product as a brick is to the Empire State Building. Think about this. If you misplace one amino acid in the protein, this results in sickle cell anemia. One protein, one amino acid. That's what we're talking about with a level of specificity here. Imagine later tonight, you talk to one of your buddies, and he says, man, I just met the coolest girl. By the way, your buddy's single, and he's young, and he's single and looking to mingle, okay? And he says, I just met the coolest girl. Man, she is smart. She is funny. She's got this winning smile. She is so into God. I mean, she talks about God as like a personal thing in her life. It's amazing. And she's really hot too, okay? She's also really hot, all right? And I talked to her, and at the end of our conversation, she gave me her phone number. And you say, wow, congratulations. That is so great, man. I've been hoping you've been getting a girlfriend. This is so great. All right, so where's the phone number? And he goes, I got it right. It's right. No, it's gone. It's gone. I don't have it. I threw it away. At the cafeteria. I don't have the phone number. I don't have the phone number. And he starts to freak out. He's like, I'm never going to see her again. I don't know who she is. I don't have her number. She's going to think I don't like her. And, so your buddy's freaking out, and you go, hold on a second. Wait, buddy, dude, I got you. He says, you do? Yeah, I got you. Look it. Check this out. I got a phone. Her number uses 614. We got that, right? Okay. And then we just need the other 7 digits. I got all the digits on my phone. I got 0 through 9, and we're good. So I got the building blocks. We just need the number. You see the problem? What we're talking about here, you could type through every single one of the numbers that's possible on that phone. Wouldn't bring you even near to the probabilities we're talking about for life. Not even near. You could be sitting there getting every person in the greater Columbus area and never getting this girl on the phone. Okay, what we're talking about for life, so much different. And when you make a number that's wrong, you're dead. All right. Miller and Urey, by the way, were wrong about the early Earth's atmosphere. They thought it was methane, ammonia, etc. They thought it was like Jupiter's atmosphere. They were wrong about this. That was not the atmosphere of the early Earth. Instead, the early Earth had carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water vapor. When we put this into the closed system, fire the electricity through it, what do we get? Nothing. We don't even have the building blocks for life. What about the RNA world? This is very popular. People say, well, we couldn't get DNA. Yeah, it's really hard. DNA and proteins, that whole chicken and egg problem. So what about RNA? RNA could give you not just the information in the RNA nucleotide, the nucleic acid, but RNA also has catalytic properties. It has enzymes. So we don't have that chicken and egg problem anymore. We've got the information with the RNA on the nucleic acid. We've also got an enzyme that in the early Earth, this could have been used to create the first cell. This is called the RNA world. This is the hypothesis. Again, I'm just going to keep repeating this. This doesn't explain for the specified complexity to create life. Oh, again, it's like your teacher at the beginning of the lecture earlier, where I was like, yeah, all you need is proteins. All you need is DNA. And then you get the thing, and that's life. All you need is DNA. All you need are proteins. You still haven't explained why those amino acids need to be lined up in a certain way to create life. What about this specific protein, this enzyme? This isn't a ribosome. This is a ribozyme. These very primitive and very, primitive isn't the right word, limited enzymes can't do the functions of proteins. All that whole elaborate thing I was describing of the membrane, and it's porous, and there's locks, and you get in cytoplasm, microtubules, ribosomes, all these things that we're describing here, a nucleus, a nucleolus, all of that being described. Oh yeah, the ribozyme, that's going to fill it. The way Stephen Meyer puts this is he says, that's like saying, go build a house. Here's a hammer and here's some nails. First of all, I don't have any plans, and I've never built anything in my life. I think you need wood, right? Don't you need wood to build a house? Concrete, I've never mixed that before. Rebar, don't you need rebar? What about electrical outlets? How do you plug those in? He's like, no, here's the hammer and nails. That's like getting the ribozymes. That's your enzyme in the RNA world. Good luck. And in order to make this work in the lab, that's what I love. They always do the RNA world in the lab, and then they say, we figured it out with the aid of very, very intelligent scientists making this happen based off previous blueprints and actually stealing from previous living cells. Oh, dear God. Yeah, that car, that Maserati just came together. How? Well, first we took a primitive Maserati, from the junkyard, and then we got a new engine from over here, and we put that together, and then we got the transmission, and then we put it. And who put this together? An engineer, and from a previous Maserati, yeah. And then we put it all together, and now, yeah, that explains how Maseratis were created. If you can believe that, I have nothing to share with you. Go ahead. What about creating life in the lab? On this, we'll close. You're going to hear me talk tonight, and then you're going to get on Google, and you're going to be typing in, what about the origin of life? And you're going to get, Life Science and all the media are always talking about how they've discovered the origin of life. They've discovered, it's all been figured out. You're going to watch on YouTube. That's what people call research these days, is we get on YouTube, so I researched it. And I think YouTube's great to supplement your research, by the way, but not to be a foundation for your research. We got to pick up books and journal articles, and we need to actually read. That's research. And compare the opposing views and stuff. Okay, anyways, sermonette done. So you're going to go out there, and you're going to look up, have we figured out the origin of life? And the resounding answer is going to be yes, we found it. We are no closer. We are no closer to the origin of life than in 1952 when the Urey experiment was just in diapers. In fact, we're farther away. People like Craig Ventner, who's a synthetic chemist, he took a bacterium, bacteria plural, bacterium singular, yeast, and took it down to its most minimal complexity. And then inside of this, he put his email address into the different information. He put in names, literary passages, and the genome of this bacterium. And from that, they said, here we go. Craig Ventner, busted open the origin of life. What he did was strip down a pre-existing yeast, a bacterium. So too, a lot of times what they'll say is we've created life. Well, what is it? Is it a prokaryote or a eukaryote? It's a virus. Viruses are parasitic on life. They are not life. So same thing here with bacteria. Bacteria go away. We're talking about life. And so big problems here. what we see when people say, I've heard TNA hypothesis, a guy had the audacity to tell me, yeah, TNA, basically that kind of life, that's figured out the origin of life. I went back and looked, I never heard of it, went back and looked it up. 100 molecule strand in a lab, can't survive in nature. And if it's so easy, why isn't this TNA cell abundant all over the earth? Why don't we see this anywhere? And it can't survive now anyways. Yeah, life in the lab. I mean, I hope they keep studying this. I don't want this to be a science stopper at all. I'm saying this. I'm saying when they create life in the lab with plenty of brilliant people, intelligent people, and they do it with plenty of funding, tons of money. I mean, they've got great purified chemicals, exquisite laboratories, state-of-the-art technology, great education, clean containers, not just a bunch of slop like in the early Earth. And then they borrow parts from all over the place and put it together, and they say that's life. I say, give me a break. That's not life. We're no closer. Paul Davies says this, life began in nature without the benefit of high-tech laboratories and delicate step-by-step procedures implemented under carefully controlled conditions. That's a good point. This whole movement of getting the right sequence to get the right organelles in the right cell, if you flub up on one of those, that takes you right back to zero. And then you're waiting on the evolutionary process to bring this all back together by chance. It could flub up again. And again, we got 50 million years here. What if it takes you a million years to get to the first part? And we've got hundreds of sequences. Anyways, he says, above all, it got going without the use of an intelligent designer. Yes, does not count. If you can show, as a scientist, how this would have happened naturally, that counts. Creating this yourself does not count. And the reports of life have been highly exaggerated. That's, of course, a play on the quote attributed to Mark Twain. The reports of my death have been highly exaggerated. Reports of life have been highly exaggerated. Here's James Tour. If you've never had a chance to read or, more importantly, watch James Tour, you haven't lived. This guy is larger than life. He's a synthetic organic chemist. He has 700 publications in peer-reviewed journals. He has started 14 companies for profit, and he has been cited 100,000 times in peer-reviewed academic literature. They're all citing James Tour on synthetic chemistry. This class is 13 lectures long. He all does it in the same clothes because he did it all at once. He just sat down one day and just recorded 13 lectures. But the more you get to know James Tour, that kind of sounds like something you would do because he's just like a larger-than-life personality. Okay, I really got to do an aside here. Watch his debate with Josh Swamidass. The first 30 minutes is James Tour yelling at Josh Swamidass, yelling. And the interviewer's like, whoa, hold on a second. And James Tour says, no. I'm not angry with Josh. I love Josh. This is just the way I talk. Josh is eating at this table. I love this. This is a great man. But throughout the whole debate, he's just screaming at Swamidass. Anyways, this guy is a character. This is what he says. He says, chemical synthesis experiments in origin of life can be summed up by a protocol analogous to this. First, you purchase some chemicals, generally in high purity, from a chemical company. He says this with a smile on his face. You call up, we have the right, yeah, we have the methane perfectly, and we have this perfectly. Okay, yeah, perfectly pure chemicals, and lots of them. Next, obtain a mixture of compounds that have a resemblance to one or more of the basic 4 classes of chemicals needed for life. Like what? Carbohydrates, nucleotides, amino acids, or lipids, not in homochiral form. Yeah, skip over that part. Identify the desired compound that you want in the mixture of many other isomers and products, then buy or make using modern non-abiotic methods, right? No, that's a double negative, non-abiotic methods using biotic methods, life existing already, then buy a purified version of that desired compound. Publish a paper making bold extrapolations about origin of life from these functionless, crude mixtures of stereochemically scrambled intermediates. Stereochemically, meaning that they're working together. They're not working together. They're scrambled. He says, engage with the often overzealous press to dial up the knob of unjustified origin of life projections Watch the misled and mesmerized layperson exclaim, "You see, scientists understand how life was formed." And he gives example after example in the class, in this chapter in the book, Mystery of Life's Origin. That was from the 80s. Groundbreaking book, very powerful book. They gave him a chapter in the update in 2020. He gives example after example where they've done just this. Check this out. See what you think of this.
We do not know how to build even a simple bacterium. The simplest bacterium with its 256 protein coding genes, we have no idea how to build it. First of all, we don't know how to build the molecules, the 4 classes of molecules that are needed for it. We don't know how to, even if we had those 4 classes of molecules, assemble them even into the simplest of bacteriums. We don't know how to do that. One can do that with the technologies we have today. We can make technologies, but we can't even make the simplest bacterium. Anybody who would say something contrary does not know what they are talking about. Show me the demonstration. Nobody has ever done it. And it's not because of lack of effort. It's not because of lack of will. First of all, they haven't been able to get the molecules to do this. And if they could make the molecules, even if we were to give them the molecules, they wouldn't have the information. There would be no inherent information in the DNA. But even if we gave them the DNA in the structure that they wanted, they wouldn't know how to put all the components together because of the sophistication within a cell. The interactomes, meaning that the interacting connectivity between the molecules, the van der Waals interactions, all of these have to be in the right place and in the right order for a cell to function. We don't even know how to define life, let alone knowing how to spark it to begin.
You got to watch that full interview. He's being interviewed by the Discovery Institute, and he's just, it's just them and an interviewer, and he's screaming at the interviewer. It's so awesome because he's so frustrated. People are like, "Oh yeah, the guy Jack so-and-so over at I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, over at Harvard. I watched his whole lecture. Yeah, we got it all figured out." He's like, "I love Jack. He's a great guy. He's a brilliant, chemist. He's dead wrong," and he gives the 18 reasons why he's wrong. Watch just a couple of those episodes. You'll see this guy sees it. He says, "Yeah, biologists love to talk about this." He says, "That's the problem with biologists. They've never created anything." This guy is a chemist, and he's at the top of his field. It's pretty awesome.